the sample that I'm going to be showing you how to sew is called stay stitching. In order to stay stitch, you're going to need to cut out one piece of pattern piece 13A, which is the shirt back. Stay stitching is used to stabilize the edges that might otherwise be stretched out of shape during the construction process. So stay stitching is done before you begin constructing any of your pattern pieces together. Stay stitching is commonly done on shirts at the shoulder seams to secure them, where you see the blue arrows, and oftentimes done around the neck. For the purposes of this seam, we're going to be stabilizing the shoulder seams where the blue arrows are. One important thing about stay stitching is that you want to make sure that you're sewing with the grain. So you'll notice that the arrows are both starting with the grain and then going out towards the edge of the fabric. Also, when stay stitching, you want to make sure that you're only sewing on a single piece of fabric. So even though you may have a shirt front and back, you will not be sewing the shoulders together. You're going to stabilize them first before constructing them together. For your stitch setting, you're going to be using a regular stitch, so your stitch length should be at 2.5. You also will not be back stitching. Instead of using a standard seam allowance, you're going to be using the 1/2 inch seam allowance as well. To make sure that you're sewing at the 1/2 inch seam allowance, you can use your seam gauge and a fabric marker or pencil to mark a 1/2 inch on both of your shoulder seams. You can see those in white. Remember, you're stitching away from, or you're stitching with the grain, sorry. And because you're stitching on a single piece of fabric, you do not need to back stitch. And you're also keeping the same regular stitch length of 2.5. You'll sew all the way to the end of the garment. And when you're finished, you can clip off the excess thread. When you're finished with the first shoulder seam, you can move on to the second one, making sure you keep it lined up with your markings at 1/2 inch. When you're finished with your sample, be sure to clip your threads. These stitches, or the stay stitching, will not be shown on your finished garment. Again, this is just to provide structure and prevent any stretching that could happen during the construction process. A lot of times stay stitching is done on any curved edge, so it could be done on skirts as well.